Hi, everyone. Welcome to Office Hours. If you are watching on YouTube, you can find out more about what we do at officehours.global. First hour on the Saturday is a general discussion, any questions that you have around media or virtual production. The second hour is usually something we want to spend a little bit more time on. As a note, that's my speaker turning on there. Sorry about that. As a note, we don't put the education hour on YouTube, so you'll have to be in Zoom for that. At 10 o'clock, we're cooking with Damyanti Gajjar. And so we sent out a link that you all should have gotten with I was out this morning. The reason we started late, part of the reason we started late, was that I was shopping at Safeway early in the morning to make sure I had everything for the day at 10. So stay tuned for that. As a quick announcement, due to Todd's not feeling well, so we're going to actually not have a Belfast project today, Belfast Method today. We couldn't quite sort out a definite plan for noon, so we're gonna take the day off. So it'll be a shorter, longer day than normal, but we'll be back next week in Belfast. So stay tuned for that. All right, now I'm going to hand it off to the host, Emily Russo. Take it away, Emily.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome. I'm excited to be back after a week off. And I saw that we have quite a few questions, so I'm just going to jump right into the first question.
Our first question is from Dennis Champion Walker in Southend on Sea, UK. He said, how would panelists respond to a client asking you to lower your long-standing hourly rate?
Ooh, all right, Chad, what do you got for us?
I would have to really, really love them a lot, and they would have to have a name that would help me in some way going forward to keep them on. I have the opposite problem in that the more I do this work and the more efficient I become at it and the more tricks I learn from groups like this, the less I get paid for hourly because I'm getting through it more quickly and more efficiently. So I generally am going up in rate as we go along and improve.
Kenneth?
Well, one of the things that I learned in the service trade was that you should charge about 4 times what you expect to make. That covers your overhead and your equipment and all that other kind of stuff, and it seems to work out. What you can tell your client is that with the collection of talent and material, you've established a rate that you think is fair, and it's important to use the word fair to the client because that subliminally suggests that if they want to be less than that, they are being less than fair. And you put it back in their ballpark and let them come back to you with another suggestion. You can also decide to remove some things and keep the rate the same.
Excellent tip. Rupert?
This kind of reminds me of the question when people ask, well, what's your best price? And I'm thinking in my head, well, my best price would be twice the amount. But it can depend on what your workload is like and what your supply of new projects, new customers are, because if you have other people ready to pay full price, if you knock it down somewhere else, you're basically losing money.
True that. Alex?
Yeah, I think that it's a complex calculation in the sense of how much do you need that revenue. If you need the revenue, then you may have to do what you need to do to keep that revenue for the time being. I think that for employers, the challenge is always when you ask somebody to do that, they may not immediately respond. So they may go, sure. And then that means that there'll be some point in the future where they're no longer available. And that's the danger for anybody who's hiring people. It's having an ongoing agreement over a long period of time and then asking someone to, drop their rate over a regular point. There's definitely points where someone hiring someone, I ask some of the folks that we freelance with, hey, I don't have the budget for your regular rate, but I usually try to get the regular rate every single time, or a good rate for them every single time. And then if I don't have that, I upfront say, this is what I have to do this project. But I always try to get back to wherever it needs to be. But asking someone to take a regular cut for over a long period of time usually just means they'll become less available, if they're good at what they do, and that's always the challenge there.
Good points from everyone. All right, let's move on to our next question.
Next question is from Rupert McCrae in Dallas, Texas. It said, Jeff Francis's video on how to improve your Zoom experience in 5 steps is great. What are the panel's thoughts on what guides could be made for steps 6 through 10 or even 11 through 15? What would they be?
Alex?
Well, actually, my answer is I looked at this video and it's really good, but there is a slight catch with the one at the moment because the UI on Zoom's changed about original sound. So I'm afraid I'm actually going to be a bit unkind and say, could Jeff make it again or insert a different thing about original sound? Because it's so good, it would just be nice to update it a little bit because I want to be able to share it with people. So I'm being mean, but that would be good. So essentially, I want one of those stages to be slightly modified.
John?
So I like how you stratified the levels of tutorials here. I would suggest that we did 0.5 through 0.9 videos where we created 3 different kits, a bronze, a silver, and a gold. And then we showed exactly how all those went together. They're a great precursor to Jeff's video.
Good. That's a good one. Roscoe?
Yeah, I did a golden list, which is just a takeoff of a bunch of links that you can kind of, because it kind of disperses. After those basic things are nailed down, then you kind of disperse into customized systems. And some people may have a mixed pre, some people may have a tech rise. So you kind of have to get a little more specific on what gear they actually have. So I'd maybe head off in that direction. But if you want, you can, my golden list is on the Discord.
I think it would be interesting to have a side-by-side, which is what I think John was kind of talking about, but like show them what it sounds like one way and then the other way so that they understand what the bad thing that they're doing is, because a lot of people don't hear themselves on their Zoom. They don't go back and watch the Zoom meeting they had, so they don't realize how terrible they sounded. Alex?
Yeah, I think that one of the things as we get into Office Hours 2.0, the other thing that's going to come up is the Office Hours YouTube channel that is not my channel. And I've been very careful not to put stuff on it, on my channel, that would cross over that line other than that we had here. And one of the things I think I want to do is definitely build on what Jeff has started and have lots of little videos. And I'm very ADD, so I just very much want like 1 minute videos on this thing and 1 minute videos on that thing. Or we stack them up where I have this idea of wanting to have the information you absolutely need in the first 30 seconds and then expound on it after that. My complaint about YouTube videos is they do the opposite, is they spend a lot of time talking ahead of time, and the golden nuggets are somewhere. I get that they want to have you watch longer, but oh my gosh, like I would come back to your channel every day if you handled everything I needed to know in the first 30 seconds and then explained it for the people who still want to know more. Give that to them in the video, but don't hold on to it until minute 3 or 4 because it makes me cuckoo crazy. Anyway.
Roscoe?
Yeah, I've heard that said is don't show me the whole kitchen, just tell me where the cookie jar is.
Yeah. And
a lot of times they want to tell me all about their kitchen and all I want is a cookie.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of times they're trying to get me to buy the countertop. So
that's interesting. I like that analogy. All right, next question.
Next question is from Alex 40 Golner in London, UK. He said, I'm going to get into making interactive AR with Apple's Reality Composer. Recommendations for a 3D modeling tool that can create new USDZ models and perhaps adapt open source models.
And then it looks like Alex wants to add a little more. So
yes. So, I mean, an example of what I might want to do with an open source model is to be able to take it apart a little bit in order to make it interactive. Because I might have something that looks good, but I might want to pull the roof off the top of it or pull the wheels off or something like that. And you can't do that unless you got the right tool for opening the USDZ and breaking it up into parts, making sure it all stays registered together nicely to using Reality Composer.
Alex?
So we've got to think about this a lot, and there are a couple things that you want to think about because there's a couple challenges. One is creating the geometry. The second is defining the UVs. The UVs are the texture mapping coordinates for any kind of surface, and then the third one is the textures themselves. And then finally, I guess the fourth one is exporting it, which turns out to be more of a challenge than we all thought it would be. Anyway, so we've made a lot of progress in this area in a project we're going to show next week. On November 3rd, we're going to have Chris Fritchie, and I'm hoping to get Jesse Schwartz and talking about the modeling that they were doing for a recent project. So there's a couple things about it. For free, you can, of course, use Blender. Now, Blender is going to not necessarily export. It might export the USDZs, but you can do that. My preferred platform to do this in is Cinema 4D. Cinema 4D has a lot of the paint tools have a lot of great surfacing tools, so the UV creation actually works really well. It's got great modeling tools. I think that Chris would probably lean towards Moto, and Moto is an incredibly good modeling package as well. So those are the kind of the ones, if you're going to pay for something, those are great ones. If you're not going to pay for something, then you can do it in Blender. What you pay for in Blender is time. So it's faster to do it it's cheaper to do it in Blender from a cash perspective. It's more expensive in time. It just takes longer to generate the geometry or the UVs. The tools just aren't as refined as what you see in Cinema. The problem is that Cinema and Moto will not export, or Blender will not export the files in the way you need them to make them look really, really good. So we've been able to get out photoreal work now out of our process. So what we found is, number one, is you have to go through the geometry and you have to reduce the geometry complexity along the edges. Long polygons next to each other create aliasing. So this is because Motion and a lot of the Apple tools don't oversample. So you get these little jagged edges along the edges. If you reduce the geometry, you can actually get rid of most of that, and then they look great. The key to the operation for surfacing, though, is Adobe Substance. So the Adobe Substance is incredible. It doesn't do the UV mapping, so you need to do that in Blender or Cinema 4D or Moto. But then you can bring it into Surface and Substance and apply all the textures and put them all together, and it's kind of a dream to do it there. Then you have to export. Here's a little trick: you have to export via material. So you export textures, and it happens to generate a USDC model that is exactly what you need. And a whole bunch of textures that you don't need. You can just throw those away. But in the process of exporting the USDC materials, it'll do what you need it to do. When you go through that process, it works great. Like I downloaded I'm working on something that needed to have, it was no trolls, I needed so I downloaded something from TurboSquid for $23. I went into Cinema 4D and I took my little troll and I put bones into his arms and pulled his arms just a little bit forward so that I could put a no thing behind it, and then leaned him forward just ever so slightly. And then I exported that out, put it into Substance, knocked it out the door, and I might even have it around here somewhere. But the key is that once you start going down that path, it's super exciting. Like USDZ is very painful, as Alex knows, to get started with. The other thing, by the way, is that Substance will do an automatic, well, not automatic, but you can do what's called ambient occlusion, which means it'll get darker around places where geometry is close to it. So it'll get it'll give it its own little shading, which looks gorgeous. That's the very quick version. We're going to do a whole hour on it on Wednesday about the pipeline that we've kind of developed, and we'll show you some of the models that we built and everything else. But I will say that it's one of the things I'm most excited about on the Apple platform is the USDC stuff, as people have heard me talk about in the past. But we're really on the precipice of something super exciting. When Apple opens it up just a little bit more, we're going to see an explosion of 3D work.
Very cool. All right. Can't wait for that. Next question.
Next question is from Tim Holmes in San Lorenzo, California. Who besides tech gets to see the program or multiview feeds from your typical live stream?
John?
So we have certain clients that direct their own shows. A lot of them we do ourselves. We call and TD both, but we have certain clients that actually have their own directorial staff. And we set up multiple rooms and breakout rooms inside of Zoom. We generally have two stages because we have people coming and going. So we have an A and B stage. That way we can queue up the next stage and then take to it immediately. But then we have for those specific clients, we have a director's room, and we feed back at least preview and program, sometimes multi-view into that room, and they're able to call the show directly from that room. But we usually have at least 6 or 7 breakouts that we pop between, and then we use Unity to talk to each other.
Jonas?
The audio person almost every time gets a multi-view, so they have an overview of which mics need to be on. Client always wants program view. Some like multi-view, but most of the time it's better to focus them on program view. And for production I'm on right now is they actually get 2 from primary and backup, so they can call out stuff if they don't like how it's in.
All right, next question. Oh, we can't hear you, Alex.
I did that perfectly too. It's really upsetting. Next question is from Rupert McRae in Dallas, Texas. He says, the Fire TV Cube could be able to accept an external USB camera for use with Zoom. What is the winning combination of dongles and adapters to get this to work while still maintaining wired Ethernet? And any camera recommendations, C920 or Brio?
Guy?
All right, I got the chance to buy one of these things, and for $13.99, here's the little dongle that I got that works. It has Ethernet, and that works, and the camera input via these USB work. The one thing I couldn't do is get an audio source that worked simultaneously. If I plugged one in, it didn't work at the same time actually, no, it did work. It didn't work with two cameras, so I tried to do two cameras at the same time, and that didn't work. The camera that I like is this Lumens one. This is the one that we use behind the scenes in Mad in the Kitchen. That's the B30U. And last week, Panasonic announced some new USB cameras that are NDI, HDMI, that have huge zoom ranges. So these ones that say preliminary have 24x zoom, and they're USB, USB-C capable cameras. So these would be pretty cool to use like in a room where you're using a big TV, like a 70-inch or something. And then far end control. So pretty cool setup.
Rupert.
But any UVC camera should basically work so long as it's kind of class compliant, right, Guy?
That's correct. The one that I tested with was the Huddle Cam, and actually I used what's called a capture card. So I used a live streaming device as well, and they both worked great.
Interesting. All right, let's go to our next question.
Our next question is from Guy Cochran in Seattle. He said, is there a Bluetooth XLR transmitter that can pair with the new Facebook Portal Plus?
Jonas.
I'm sure there are Bluetooth adapters, but I just remembered this thing that Alex used for his streaming to Clubhouse, and in theory you could bridge Dante into it then, which would be really cool if you then can add additional DSP and all that.
Alex?
So how would you get it Bluetooth? Oh, you'd use Bluetooth. I got it. So you're talking about using, making it available to the Facebook portal as a Bluetooth, and then you have Dante that's there. Yeah, that should work. The other one to look at is JK Audio makes a ton of Bluetooth tools that are, I don't know which ones would be the right one to make that work, but that's like half their specialty is doing Bluetooth tools to integrate professional audio, everything from 5-pin headset adapters to everything else. Is how do you get that into Bluetooth is something that JK Audio thinks about a lot.
All right, next question.
Next question is from Guy Cochran in Seattle. During a production, where can I find stock video to use quickly?
Jonas.
The one site that I found that I really like for productions is ArtGrid, because they give you all the raw files too, depending on your subscription. ArtGrid and Artlist both are together, and the one thing that I really notice is when they say it's one license for all, they really mean it. I never had any copyright issues with their music or their footage. And the cool thing is, often I found it's hard. You find the first clip that almost fits perfectly, but what they do is every clip is part of a story. So this is a clip of two people riding a motorbike, and then you have at least 3 other clips with close-ups and all that. So doing a production, if I need something fast and I need high quality, that's what I would choose. And you get all the data, you get all the raws.
Very cool. Michael.
Yeah, same as what Jonas said. There is a place called envato.com, envato.com, and it's like $159 a year, and all the footage you can stand. So it's fantastic price, and you can get tons and tons of footage, close-ups, like Jonas was saying, of the same shot, and other production and backgrounds and all kinds of things. It's a really great place. I make little music videos with them.
Good. Guy.
Throwing myself the softball here. So I've been playing with the new version of Wirecast, and one of the things that they tout is 500,000 free elements that are included. So if you go in and you add a piece of media into their stock library, then do a search, you can see that you can pull up something like fireworks and it downloads, and then you can pop it in and then NDI this into some other show that you might have, like in vMix or something like that. But it's pretty amazing that you can search through 500,000 elements and they're royalty free and start using them right away in production. So pretty cool stuff to look at. There's a free trial, I think, that you can download.
Alex? Oh, you're muted.
Sorry about that. I think this market has gotten really mature. So there's a lot of the ones that we use. The ones that I find that are the highest quality of the, before you step up into the crazy costs are, I love ArtGrid, by the way. Adobe stock actually is pretty good. We just use them for a couple of the stuff. It's a little bit more expensive. We're paying $250 a clip, but they tend to be, the quality in the art direction tends to be just a little bit better. If you're doing something that's a little higher quality and you need it, and it needs to be technically a little bit better than some of the other ones. I haven't seen the Wirecast one, so it could be great. I just don't know. Other ones we use, of course, are iStock Photo and Shutterstock are also other ones that we've used quite a bit, but all of them get you into, they start getting you anywhere from $80 to $250 a clip, and so those are the things to kind of think about. All of them, as someone who has shot lots of these clips, cost a lot less than shooting them yourself. so they tend to be a lot better. The folks that shoot these, I have some friends that shoot some of this video and some of the stills. And they build up and spend a lot of money, and they get the actors, and then they shoot for a week, and they just have lots and lots of different pieces, and then they put it. And it's not a bad business if you understand the model and what you're serving. So anyway, so those are some. I think that the one that I've used the most in the last year has been ArtGrid, but I have a tendency to go through kind of all of them to find what I need.
Alex 40.
And one other thing to generally watch out for is, well, firstly, go for 4K, even if you're doing a 1080p show, because you need a bit of flexibility there. So check out their 4K selection, which even these days can be a little smaller than you might think. But watch out for frame rates. Lots of things are 25 frames a second, which isn't good for many shows and for streaming and stuff like that. So check out the selection at the frame rate you want to use, or you'll have to spend some time changing the frame rate.
Alex?
I realized as soon as I closed my mic that I had forgotten to say frame rate is an issue, because there's a ton of stuff, I guess, it's shot in Europe that is all 25 frame per second, and so you buy it and then you're like, really? So I think that that is something to keep in mind. Yeah, absolutely.
All right, next question.
Next question is from Tim Holm in San Lorenzo, California. He said, "Will Here to Record run on a Raspberry Pi?"
John?
I'm guessing you mean H2R graphics, but yes, someday, I hope so. There's a current sort of half solution, which is you can open any of the outputs on a Raspberry Pi and show your graphics already, because it all works over the local network. But I haven't actually built for the Pi yet, and that's because I've only released one beta version of the new released software, and I have a few more fixes to do before I go delving into spending time on the Pi stuff and fixing issues with that. But that's my plan anyway. Yeah.
Jonas?
Also, just put the core into the cloud and then use the output on the Pi. That's how I do it.
Sorry, I couldn't get unmuted for a second. All right, next question.
Next question is from Fred Eric Eckert in Bad Hernab, Germany. And he says, can the panel please discuss the pro and cons of company structures behind Blender compared to other companies like Maxon or Autodesk?
Alex?
Blender is, of course, a kind of an open source project. So large corporations like Apple and Epic and others have given money to the project, but it doesn't have quite the same business model. Obviously, it's free to download. I think that there are some advantages to it. It's free, and it's gotten a lot better as more funding has become available to what it does. So I think Blender is a great place to get started. The problem really is that without the focus of a company trying to figure out how to leverage in a specific market, and without the resources, the tools aren't as mature. And so. The tools aren't as mature for the process, so you end up with better tools from companies that are selling something for a lot of money. And that just, it's kind of like, well, if you pay a lot of money, you get a nicer car, and so it costs money to have these things work. And so, if you have more time than money, then use Blender. If you have more money than time, then you start to buy into other things. So for instance, Modo is a great modeling package. Cinema 4D kind of owns the graphics market. So graphics tools tools for broadcast graphics have really standardized around Cinema 4D over the last 10 years. The other ones that we pay attention to are things like Houdini. Houdini probably has some of the best USDZ support right now and does incredible particle systems, and it's a very high-end tool. And then Maya, and so those are the ones that, and there's 3D Studio, but 3D Studio is kind of something I don't know enough about. It's out there. It's got a big market. I'm not saying it's small. I don't know anything about it. It's been invisible to me most of my production life, and so. But I think that those are to me, the big four that you'd pay attention, or five would be Blender, Cinema 4D, Modo, Houdini, and Maya. And if you're in one of those, you've got a pretty large community. It just depends on what vertical you're trying to go to. Again, my go-to app for the last 15 years has been Cinema 4D. And I've used a lot of Modo. The learning curve on Houdini and Maya is steep. So you really have to be committed if you're going to use those two apps.
All right, next question.
Next question is from Tim Holm in San Lorenzo. He said, Office Hours is a huge resource for live stream and media production. Where else do you gather information to better your craft?
John Preto.
Tim, this is a great question. So I used to read about 20 to 30 magazines a month back in the old days, the olden times. And now, in addition to Office Hours, everything that I learn is from YouTube. There's some fantastic channels out there on every topic.
Roscoe.
Yeah, I boil down the YouTube searching also. I oftentimes limit it by the latest month, because sometimes I'm looking for something and I don't want the old videos on that topic. I really want to see what people are posting most recently. Cinematography.net I find to be just a wealth of people who have been doing this for many, many years and can talk through a lot of technology and focus in a specific area, specifically how to get the best images up on the screen. In the Red user forum, there's a wonderful place called Ask David Mullen. David Mullen is a working cinematographer, DP, and he will take any question, and the questions he gets is great, and his responses are absolutely wonderful. So yeah, those type of forums, some of them are curated, but I agree, YouTube is just an incredible resource.
John Barker, sorry.
That's okay. Yes, YouTube. I spend too much time on YouTube, but if you're a fan of Discord and you like Discord, I do have my own here to record Discord server, and I'm not really worried about plugging that, because even though it started out as like a way for me to chat with people outside of YouTube, it's went well beyond that, and it's just a bunch of people, like 1,500 people sharing ideas, a lot of solo production people just having ideas, trying equipment on a budget, or all the way up to constellations and stuff. So if you like Discord and the Officers Discord, you can ask me where to find the link for that one.
Alex?
I will second the YouTube outside of this group, which is most of what I do outside of work. So I at work, I pretty much just have to figure it out on my own. But YouTube is probably my second largest resource. I'm a real big fan of 2x speed. So I've gotten, the one thing I would do is I would highly recommend training yourself to learn fast. You don't turn it all the way up at one time, but turn it up to 1.25. If you're comfortable, turn it up to 1.5, turn it up to 1.75. I find the YouTube videos a lot more tolerable, somewhere between 1.75 and 2.0. As far as playback speed, and so but that really has made a difference, and that of course in Audible. And then finally, there's a hack that you can create on a Mac. I don't have a Kindle. I may buy one just because the hack is a little bit of a pain. Being able to listen to Kindle books is kind of the key to the operation. The Kindle, there's so many books out there that have so much information that, and I don't monotask very much. So I don't read, other than being with all of you, that's probably the only time in the day that I monotask. And so being able to listen to stuff while I'm cooking or walking or driving or whatever. And there's books that, a lot of the technical books that I listen to, that I want to listen to, I can't, because they don't make them into Audibles because the market's not large enough, but they do make Kindle ones. And so either having a Kindle or having a way to play them back. And on the iPhone, you have to hack it. You have to put it into a playlist and hit and tell it to play. There's like a roundabout way to play your Kindles. The voice reproduction is unbelievable, and you can listen to it faster than the human ones on Audible. So I would actually, I'm now leaning more and more towards Kindle books that I can listen to than the Audible books that that were actually read out.
Michael?
Yeah, I really like gearspace.com. You can talk with all the people that make your favorite records. You can go to the mastering forum and ask questions, how to get your audio up to peak production. Just a tremendous place. Sonicstate.com is another place for pro audio. They have great reviews of products. Nick Batt, who's also on here often, runs that website and has a huge staff and does great reviews of synthesizers and production.
Alex?
One word about GearSpace, which used to be called something we couldn't say in the show, is just be careful of asking basic questions in GearSpace. It's not nearly as accepting as office hours as our Discord. So you want to watch for a while before you start asking questions. Read through it. If it's been written before they will tell you that it's been written before, and sometimes not in a nice way. So just kind of tread lightly when you first go. It's an incredible resource of incredibly valuable artists, but they're a little less understanding than in other forums.
Nice warning. All right, next question.
Next question is from Paul Prusakowski in Gainesville. He said, what are your favorite affordable ceiling mounted bars for suspending studio lights needed for an 18 by 18 stage grid?
Rupert?
Well, there's options out there. I know a lot of people like SpeedRail. It's a kind of go-to system, very versatile, but it can get expensive. So if you're looking for something more affordable, there are other solutions. You can put things together out of black pipe, and there's that stuff out there called maker pipe. But in a stage environment or professional environment where you've got people under it, you really need to decide where you're going to spend your money and where you want to go affordable, because up above people's heads, you want to put the money into your fixing arrangements, getting into structure, making sure all that's calculated from a weight perspective, and everything's tied off from a safety cable perspective. So you've got options, but at height above people, you've got to put some investment into the safety side of things. If it's at height, you may even want to look at winching that stuff, so you don't have to get up there on ladders or whatever to change stuff out. That takes time. It's just where you want to put the money.
Good. Alex?
Yeah, I'm actually trying the maker pipe roll. I have a box full of little connectors, and I'm going to be putting it up on my own little one. I want to see what it looks like, because it is significantly less expensive than the Hollander connections for SpeedRail. So, I mean, one piece of Hollander costs more than all the connections that I got from maker pipe. So there's a significant change in the cost structure. That said, I don't think I would do it at 18 by 18. Like, I think I would go back to SpeedRail at something that size. A, for safety, and B, for just how it looks. Clients make a lot of decisions about you based on how tidy and how normal it looks. We kind of I kind of tell my crews oftentimes, just don't be weird. Like, don't do anything. Don't be creative. You can do that on your own stuff, but when you're in front of a bunch of clients, don't do anything weird. Like, just do it the way that everybody does it. You can refine that, but don't get super creative about, I found a super efficient way to do this thing. And I did that. I was weird for 5 years, doing these things. And, I eventually learned that you just, people will make decisions about whether you're reliable or not, or whether you're hireable or not, or whether they're safe or not, based on, how you show up for an event and how you equip yourself. And so you have to keep that in mind as you build those that are beyond, they're beyond what people should pay attention to, but they absolutely do.
Asco?
Sometimes you can find these in the used market, but pre-built trusses that you bolt together would be a fairly expensive way. If you want to go cheap but strong, I'd go with Schedule 40 pipe with some safety chains and roto locks. It's about as strong as you can get for the weight. It is steel. It's heavy. It's a little harder to work with, but putting stuff over people's heads, you don't want to compromise.
Yes, please don't compromise. All right. Next question.
Next question is from Tim Holm in San Lorenzo, California. He said, do you have or use event checklists for tech, or do you plug and play test on the fly when you set things up?
John Barker.
I actually do plug, play, test on the fly. The things that I make lists for usually are what equipment to bring, because I don't want to miss anything behind. But the other one that I really care about is if I'm going to a venue, I have a checklist of things to ask them ahead of time. Can I have this delivered to here? Do you have that tested? And what's the speed of this? Those are things that I've made mistakes for in the past and really want to ask before I go somewhere. Otherwise, I just get there and tinker and give myself enough time to plug, test, and have enough cables to replug and retest.
Alex?
Yeah, one of the things that I was trying to find a picture of some of our buildups, but what John just said about ahead of time asking the right questions is super key. You want to have really uncomfortable questions that a lot of them are kind of painful conversations with folks about asking, all the things that you needed to know ahead of time and trying to work as much of those out before you get there. There's nothing worse than having a bunch of surprises when you're there. It's not good for the venue. It's not good for your partners. It's not good for you. And what sets a lot of more tied up production crews from the crews that show up and don't come back again are really how prepared they are when they get there. Now, I'm just going to show you kind of a quick example here. Let's see if I can cut to this. So if you look at this here, this image, that is all of Dreamforce in I think 2014 or 2015 or something. But that's 8 rooms being pre-wired. So basically we wired up all the rooms, built all of them out, built all of the IO in our office, and made sure that absolutely everything worked before, and tied it all back together, made sure that everything worked in our office before we went to the venue. When we got to the venue, there's a bunch of things that it saved us on. Number one is that there weren't a lot of surprises, and then the only surprises are surprises that come from the venue. That the fiber doesn't work, or this doesn't work, or we don't have power, or we don't, and all things that we had asked for ahead of time, because you think about what to ask for because you built it already. So we built it already. Oh, right, we're going to need this much this and this much power and these things when you have it all done. The other thing is it saved us probably $20,000 in union fees because all those kits were built in our office, and we were able to roll them in with one person and set them up in 45 minutes rather than a day of 2 people, for every one of those, and so it makes a huge difference when you can do as much as you can in your office. And so we're really in the habit of building everything up and then breaking it back down very carefully and putting it in where it needs to go.
Roscoe?
My students hear from me all the time, did you do the checklist? And so anytime there's an issue, did you do the checklist? And you usually find, oh, you didn't pay attention to number 3. And number 3 will say, if you run into this, such as for us, a lot, it's the SDI to Thunderbolt connection into a Mac Mini into the media recorder. I can't forget the name right now from Blackmagic Design. Sometimes that connection doesn't go. You have to restart the computer, but they'll go anyways. 10-point checklists are, yes, a necessity. Sometimes it's all fits on a single page, but there may be 5 different checklists, one for audio, one for this. That being said, anytime I get to a new venue and I'm not doing anything nearly as what Alex just showed, but I run in there, I try and get the signal path flowing. I don't care about the cables being taped down, even if I'm in there without people in danger. I don't worry about the cables. I just get the cables hooked up. I get the system up and running, and I make sure that I have signal flowing all the way through the system. Then I go back and fine tune stuff.
I would just like to say, don't trust the venue. They're going to tell you they have it. They're going to tell you it works. And then you're going to get there and it's going to be in a giant bucket and a giant tangle. And you're going to have to undo it all and find out that 2 connectors are missing. Not speaking from experience or anything. All right, next question.
Not that she's bitter. Next question is from Rupert McRae in Dallas, Texas. There have been 48 Zoom updates in the last 18 months in the client alone, covering 26 pages of release notes. What changes might we see over the next 18 months and at what rate? How do you plan to keep up ahead of the changes?
Alex?
I do think that we're going to see a lot more in the kind of the event space, and I think that there's a lot of cleanup that they need to do related to breakout rooms, webinars, how those interact. They've now that people are getting more and more serious about using Zoom for those things, a lot of what was kind of cobbled together needs to kind of. I personally think that at some point Zoom's going to have to kind of rip a whole bunch of the piping out and then put it all back together again. Like it's not, the things have been kind of added on to a certain level. And I think what we're probably going to see in the next, my guess, I mean, and I don't have any information about it, but my guess is the next 24 months, we'll see kind of a rewrite of a lot of the bits and pieces, which is going to be very painful because a lot of people are using it. But I think that is something that would do them well. I also think we'll see a lot more related to the APIs and support for other people continuing to add on to what Zoom can do.
John Preto.
I have a friend, his name is Rupert, and he always knows what's coming next on Zoom. He tells me what's going on and whether or not I should upgrade or not. And so watch Office Hours. He's a good resource for that.
Kai?
Yeah, yesterday in Zoom Test Kitchen, we had Jeff Widgren, who was fresh off a show. I mean, like literally minutes off of a show. And he was saying one of the things that he found was that in Zoom events, he wishes that there was something called a cocktail hour in between sessions where people could mingle. So instead of just going from a meeting into a meeting where it was just, straight business, he wishes that he would have set up a room for people to go and hang out and converse. And so that's something that I think as the event team gets this kind of feedback, we're going to see more and more ways of users talking amongst themselves in some kind of lobby or cocktail hour or something like that. So I'm excited to see how this, in fact, I just got conference myself. So I'm excited to use it.
Alex?
Yeah, I think that's something that FMC did even in their first NAB was really coverage was to provide places for people just to kind of hang out. Many rooms that you kind of jump in and out of that you can go and talk to folks. And I thought when they did it, this isn't going to work at all, but it actually worked really well. There's a lot of fun people, a lot of people having a good time, kind of talking to each other.
All right, next question.
Next question is from Douglas Carmichael. It said, even though Andy and Jonathan are flying home, can they still remotely access and troubleshoot the system if needed? No, they can't. That's what we're working on. So the it just barely works, at the moment. So I think that that's the trouble with it at the moment. So they're going to work on it for the next couple of days, and then we're going to start handing it off to all of you. Hopefully sometime next week, and then from there we'll start to figure it out. One of the things that I want to put out there for people listening is that we're going to do a lot of labs with Isadora and Universe. It's going to be very important. It's great that Andy and Jonathan have gotten us this far, but we're going to have to be able to take over that process over time. And so a lot of us have to really be thinking about how we're going to build. And I think it's like going to be an incredible learning experience to have Andy and Jonathan talking to us about how this works, how Universe works, how Isadora works. But it's up to us to figure out what they've built is magnificent. Like it's just an incredible thing. And what we can learn from the Isadora file that Andy built and the Universe file that Jonathan built it'll push us all light years forward. Even if we don't use those apps, just thinking about the process is going to be really important. So stay tuned for those labs. They'll be going out in the email. And we're going to start doing labs at least 2 or 3 times a week in Isadora, and possibly maybe within the next couple of weeks every day, where we kind of work through it. Because the thing that I really realized watching what they were doing was there's nothing simple about this. And if we don't get a bunch of people trained up, we're going to have a hard time evolving, because it's a really complex system that he's built that's super powerful, but we're going to have to get and I think we as a group can make it even bigger and better and more creative. And then we can also use it for our own stuff. The idea is that, we're going to make this available to everybody. You can take it, make it better, use it for your own stuff. The goal is this is the seed that everyone can play with. So it's going to be an open architecture. I'm hoping that people will run off and build better versions of it and then come back and inform it. And then we'll just keep on, evolving what we're doing as by building these kind of collaborative broadcasts.
All right. Next question.
Next question is from Tim Holm in San Lorenzo, California. He said, how do you signal talent with times, changes, or unfolding information that is important to their part while they're in front of the camera?
John Parker?
Tried things in the past like agreed upon hand signals or little cards and stuff, but the best way I find is an in-ear system. The huge thing to keep in mind there is whoever's on the microphone end of that needs to be very, very, very skilled and careful, and they need to think about what they're going to say 5 times before they say it. I've only ever done that once, and it's terrifying. And someone was telling a very emotional story, but she wanted me to tell her when she had 3 minutes left, it's really hard. You never know when to speak, especially if they're doing a lot of talking. But in-ear has been the best way that I've found.
Chad.
I use vMix, and I have the ability through that tool to send my own voice to any individual panelist or everyone at the same time. I also have the opportunity to craft a return feed, so I can put up a slate in front of them that they can read or see important index points, or worst case, a Google Live doc, but I'd rather have them still looking this way. And ideally, I don't want to say anything while somebody else is saying something. I don't want to be in their head while they're trying to communicate. So I'd probably go with something visual on screen first.
Alex?
Yeah, we do exactly the same thing. We want a visual cue and a in-ear. And then the final one is having a stage manager there that can give them things. The most important one generally is this. This means stretch. It means we're not ready to go to the next thing. So we do the stretch, and this, which means wrap it up. So these two and this are the two most important things for a stage manager to know how to do well and clear right behind the camera.
All right, next question.
Next question is from Rupert McCrae in Dallas, Texas. He said, what are the thoughts on gooseneck mic stands with built-in XLR connectors, sometimes used at podiums?
Guy.
I like them. I mean, our church uses one, and so I have to listen to it every Sunday. And everything from a little kid being able to grab onto it and get it in front of their face. The only thing I don't like is sometimes when people do get it dialed right in, and then they will exhibit plosives that really pummel that mic, and it can be loud if some guests are watching in their house with subwoofers, and it really just resonates because it feeds all the way through, and I don't have control of the EQ on our system, so it can be really, really problematic. And thankfully our podiums are motorized, so somebody's controlling the height of the podium, so it's kind of slick the way that they're able to bring that down for kids and back up. But yeah, sometimes people are aggressive grabbing onto those things, and it can cause a lot of rustle even throughout the in-room speakers can get quite the loud just banging of noise if somebody's not gentle.
Alex?
Overall, I find them to be very tinty. So that's that's my biggest complaint about them, is that they're kind of a tinty sound, and they're very present, and so you hear a lot of sibilance and so on and so forth with those mics. The one exception is the Sheps podium mics, which are incredibly expensive, but at $2,000 or $3,000 each, the capsules are significantly better. It's actually what you see if you're watching I'm not sure if both sides use it or not, but I know that when the Democratic side from the Hill from Congress goes up, those are two little Sheps mics that are there, and then Earthworks makes another one that's also very good. So those are the only two that I've found that I'm really happy listening to. But overall, I find them to be a little tinty.
Kenneth.
I agree with Guy. You go to all the effort you can to put that microphone where you know it will be proper, and everyone will put it where they know it will be proper, which is not what you wanted in the first place. And as a result, it's plosive city. Secondly, they're an excellent source of little squeaky noises.
All right, next question.
Next question is from Douglas Carmichael. He said, in the UK, mobile production vehicles are often called scanners. Where did that come from?
Rupert.
Does anybody else have a better answer? Because I hadn't heard this. Maybe it's a thing, but I just wonder whether it's some confusion, because there is a truck brand that's pretty popular called Scania, and sometimes that just might get confused. But if there's a different answer out there, then that may be a different answer.
Roscoe.
Well, you have to remember CRTs put off a lot of electromagnetic forces. So there were actually vans that could drive down the street and see that people had a CRT running in their house, and then they would check to see if they paid their BBC licensing fee. And if they hadn't, you got a nice little knock on the door and said, "Hello, we're the government and we're here."
That is 100% true.
Alex.
Sorry, as an American, that just seems so crazy. So anyway, mostly when we're in the UK, the production trucks are called OB vans. OB vans or OB trucks. I'm not familiar with them being called scanners, but that OBs are what we hear a lot.
All right, next question.
Next question is from David Brady in New York. He said, I need to make some changes to one of my recent Clock 8001 builds, but the Pi image doesn't have some common tools like nano, or the environment variables are not set right. How can I dial things in and regain terminal access?
Rupert.
I'd have to check that build specifically, but if you can get local console access, then you should be able to get to some of the command line like apt-get, install and update, and get a package list. But I'm just not familiar with that build specifically.
All right, next question.
Next question is from Douglas Carmichael. He said, when recording a drum machine like the Roland TR8S without individual outputs for each drum, would recording the kick and the two stereo stems, one for all the drums, one for hi-hats, be sufficient for proper mixing and mastering?
Nobody?
I don't know. I think this is a Tuesday question. This is a Tuesday question, not a Saturday question. So I think you caught us off guard, Douglas. All right.
Next
question is also from Douglas Carmichael. He says, is the Matchbox display from a satellite feed? It shows us, it shows us the IP address subnet mask of the on the public uplink. Wouldn't that be a security risk?
Chad.
I'm less concerned about the specific image that Douglas showed, because the IP that it's displaying is an internal IP address. You can only access that from within that network, and if they have their network security up to specs, they should not have much of a concern. But I would still probably recommend using an ID number that internally I could cross-reference to an IP address if security isn't my strongest point.
All right, and that looks like it brought us to the end of the first hour, and we are ready for our educators. So if you're an educator in the audience and you'd like to join the panel, make sure that you raise your hand. And what are we going to do?
I'm going to do 8:10.
8:10. All right, so everybody back at 8:10. If you're joining us on YouTube, remember you have to join Zoom to see the educator hour. We don't stream that live to YouTube.
And thanks to our folks on YouTube. And Roscoe, go ahead and close the live feed.